Coogs House, the Houston Cougars have a football game tomorrow that they can't lose, really.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, the daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach, Parker Ainsworth, and whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to step by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first. I guess in this case, it might be second. That's why I got tripped up. Listen of the day for a bonus episode of Locked On Cougs. If you enjoy the episode, want to join the conversation, don't know what to say, tell us in the comments down below if you think of cake as bread. Now, it's the same question as the other episode today, but it's the conversation we're having around the house. It's a long story. Today's episode is going to be looking at a quarterback conversation ahead of the Houston Cougars spring football game on Saturday. Lots of questions look to get answered in that game. Unfortunately, I'm not sure that the quarterback one gets solved. We'll talk some about the guys further down the depth chart that we're going to get to play on Saturday. And we're going to talk about the guy that's going to be taking the bulk of the first team snaps, I imagine. But first, everyone's question is who's going to be starting for the Houston Cougars, because I feel like, especially coming off of a successful basketball season, where you saw Jamal Shed, who just declared for the NBA draft and made the the other episode today is all about that. If you can go check that out. We've seen the impact of a strong leader that has the ball in their hands all the time, right? Point guard Jamal led the Houston Cougars to a Big 12 regular season championship, and had he not busted his ankle, I'm thinking we're at least talking Final Four, right? And I don't mean to belabor that point a lot, but his leadership was a big part of that. In football, the guy that's that leader is much more easily identifiable than basketball. It's the quarterback. The quarterback gets the snap, let's just think wonky, on every play, right? Every single play, the quarterback is making the decisions. He's the extension of the coach on the field on offense. You're dictating the game with offense. You're also not trying to have 3 and outs. You want to stay on the field longer, etc. And that signal caller is so important. I'm not saying you can't win with a middle of the road quarterback, but the way the quarterback plays both elevates your ceiling and lowers your floor, as we've seen at different points in the Houston Cougar history. We've seen Case Keenum raise that ceiling really, really high. Greg Ward raised that ceiling really, really high. Clayton Tune, I'd argue, he's not quite Case, but he raised the ceiling really, really high. You've seen other guys, I'm not going to say their names because this is a little bit of denigrating, but other guys have lowered the floor of where Houston could be as a program, too, right? So as we look at this, we're trying to figure out what the quarterback situation is this fall. And unfortunately, I'm here to tell you, I'm very confident the starting quarterback for next fall has not gotten a semi-live snap this spring. Donovan Smith had shoulder surgery, repaired his labrum. Everything's on track. Everything's healing fine, but has not been able to throw in the spring, let alone do anything where live contact would even be potential. I would point out it's very clear he's actively involved in practice and film sessions. He's leading the team the best he can without being able to physically perform at the highest level. And I think Donovan gets a bad rap because as the leader of the team, we talk about quarterbacks being leaders, a lot of the failures of last year kind of fall at his feet, right? That's the gift and the curse of being that quarterback. Now, admittedly, some of it's also on the coach who's no longer with the program, right? I'm sure that there's some people that give a lot of flack to him. But Donovan caught a lot of it as well. Donovan had, I would say, a decent year for a quarterback's first year in an offensive system. Now, obviously, with things shifting, it is going to be another first year in an offensive system, given the coaching changes. But I think it's safe to say that there's going to be a little bit more comfort or understanding because he at least knows the guys he's getting the ball to and kind of knows what to expect in a bunch of just different situations. Last year, Donovan threw the ball for 2,800 yards on 64.5% completions. He had 22 touchdowns and 13 picks. And I think the thing that really haunted Houston fans about, I'm about to say Houstonians, but really just all Houston fans about those picks were that they seemed to come like in bunches, right? It was like once the defense got them, they kind of got them, right? And that's unfortunate, right? But I do think that what people would understand that looked across the country is there were plenty of teams that had a lot more success than Houston with quarterbacks that threw 22 touchdowns or 20 to 25 touchdowns and 10 to 15 picks, right? That's not insurmountable. He wasn't like crushing the program or keeping it down with those by any stretch. And 2,800 yards on 65% completion space. I mean, that's pretty strong as well. Donovan had a good, decent first year at Houston. We're hoping for continued growth. For what it's worth, it was also the first game where he started every game as a college quarterback at Texas Tech in 2022. He started a handful before getting replaced and then coming in as more of a specialist. He's a big, strong runner. And I would almost argue that part of the flaw in last year was you didn't see Holgorsen and them let him loose on those running kind of things very often. For instance, in 138 attempts in his year at Houston, he had 6 touchdowns. He also had a catch for what it's worth. And he had just 76 attempts in his last year at Tech and had 7 rushing touchdowns. I think that when you factor in some of those attempts or scrambles and stuff like that, more intention, more focus on where and how you're running him could open him up more for sure. And I kind of think actually that Kevin Barbay is going to open that up this fall. I say all that to say that there is a question, I think, among some fans about who's going to start a quarterback. It's a new system. It's a new year. It's new. But it's going to be Donovan Smith. Donovan Smith's going to be the starter this fall to start the season at the very least. Obviously, we'll be tracking it each and every day here Locked on Cougs, and things could change, things could shift. But Houston's starting quarterback will not be available this Saturday. And I think that kind of lets the wind out of some of the sails of people as things are getting going right now. I am not upset about Donovan. Like I said, I think that there's a high potential for a big second-year boom as a starter. I also think, for what it's worth, that Barbay comes in with a good experience, some fresh eyes on the situation. All reports from practice are that the culture around practice is night and day from a year ago, and so I think that that's going to also help grow and develop Donovan as a quarterback and a leader. I'm excited about what he brings. I know that every one of your Houston Cougar content creators kind of had up and down opinions on Donovan at various times. But I feel like there's some positive movements in how this is going. All of that said, with Donovan not playing on Saturday, that doesn't mean there's nothing to watch. His backup might be one of the most electric talents on the roster. And I want to talk about what Zeon Chris brings in a second and what kinds of things he could bring this Saturday and beyond. But first, we got to talk about keeping your well-oiled machine moving, just like the goal of spring ball is to keep all of the Houston Cougar well-oiled football players moving and healthy and upright. And passion, drive, and patience are what drive a successful football team, win championships, and what keep your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. Over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your parts guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because the eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. All the parts you want and the prices for all the parts you need and the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive. ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. All right, so as we get into the spring game on Saturday, you're going to see a athletic, strong, well-built guy playing quarterback with what I'm assuming is the first team. He's wearing number 2. His name is Zeon Chris. He comes over from Louisiana. I always want to say Louisiana Lafayette. It has not been that for years. But at 6'3", 210, Zeon Chris brings a very fun skill set to the Houston Cougars. Now, he was redshirted as a freshman, did not play a whole lot at Louisiana. His sophomore year last year, he played in 8 football games, threw 66% for completions for 1,200 yards, had 11 touchdowns and 5 picks. I think, though, the thing that's going to be fun, and we'll see how they let this play out in the spring game, is he had 73 rushes for 500 yards and 6 touchdowns. The kid can boogie. You're looking at an average of 6.5 yards per attempt. And when you factor in the fact that quarterbacks, scramble and get out of the pocket and might only get a yard or two before having to go down or sliding or whatever, I'm telling you guys, this guy's a lot of fun. He's an electric athlete, brings true speed to the quarterback position, and he projects to be the second-string quarterback this year with a chance to start the year after he's learned the offense under Kevin Barbay in this first season. And kind of continues to develop as a quarterback. He's not a finished product. He's not a perfect product. That's why he's going to, I think, start the year off as the number 2 quarterback. But what will be interesting is, I think, in watching some of his stuff on YouTube and talking to the folks over at Locked On Sunbelt, he's too electric an athlete to not play. He just is. And so what I wonder is, do you see him in packages, not quite wildcat packages, because he can throw it a little bit, right? But in different packages that kind of get him in place where he can use his talents to the best of his abilities, right? And can he really take advantage of being a great athlete on the field, right? What'll be interesting on this Saturday at the spring game to answer some questions will be, obviously, to get work with the ones, he's going to need to run some traditional stuff as well. But if his role is going to be the, I don't want to say gimmicky, but the more unique stuff, does Houston start running that as early as this Saturday in April? I know that some people would say you're worried about putting on film and everyone's going to watch this game because it's on ESPN Plus and yada, yada, yada. You don't want to put too much of what you're doing out there and blah, blah, blah. The truth is, in college football, everyone gets that. Everyone's going to find your stuff. There are no secrets. It's more about execution than anything. That's why when you hear about a secret, it's such an incredible story, like they kept such and such off, they had no idea blah, blah, blah was coming, because that's so rare, right? But when I think about what Zeon Chriss is going to bring, he's going to have these unique sets. I think it's going to be intentional and, frankly, very successful for Houston to use him in certain spots like that next season. And I think it's worth rolling out this Saturday. It'll involve a lot of first-teamers. It'll involve the first-team offensive line, involve the first-team receivers, and that's who's out there throwing with, because Donovan Smith can't throw. I think it's worth lining up and doing it, and I don't really see a whole lot of arguments against it. And with that being the case, I bet you see some offense that looks funky or different out there. The truth is that the bulk of what Barbay does, the bulk of what they'll do on Saturday, I'm sure, is a lot of 11 and 12 personnel. So it means one running back, the first digit of that number, 11, 12, one running back, and 1 or 2 tight end, H-back type guys in the field at all times. I imagine you'll see Matt Burns is the first guy, but you'll see a lot of Chris, the large guy he's like 6'7", 6'8". I think one place saw 6'9". He's a giant. He's hard to miss out there on the football field. I imagine you'll see them out there, frankly, in the backfield, attached line of scrimmage, in a bunch of different spots. Barbay will put a lot of that kind of window dressing around stuff if he does what he did at Mississippi State and App State to kind of get to basic run game concepts. And that you're going to see Parker Jenkins, Rashawn Stanford, Tony Mathis. That's when you get to see the guys that I think are going to be toting the rock a lot this fall. And we talked about running back some in Thursday's Locked On Cougs episode. And obviously, people that follow the show for a while know I'm a gigantic Parker Jenkins fan. I think the interesting thing in a spring game with that is you don't want to run your guys into the ground because you're trying to get work done, get some stuff on video to go study, and head into the summer with a good idea of what you're doing, right? In a competitive way. I'm not saying you're not trying to compete while you're there. You got to practice competing, frankly. A good coach I worked with one time talked about how you got to practice competing, and every non-fundamental drill you do at least. I think that's another part of this, but I don't want to like run my running backs in the ground either, right? So I see a mixture of things happening with Zeon Chris, and what I've kind of gotten a long-winded way to get to here is, do you see a different offense with Chris than you see with the third string guy, who I'm hearing is Caleb McMichael? We'll see, I guess, on Saturday who gets reps with the second team. It could be LA, but we'll see. I heard it was Caleb McMichael's getting a lot of reps, though. I heard he's having a pretty good spring, and would not surprise me if he got the first set of reps with the second team, based on talking to a guy or two. McMichael is a redshirt freshman. He was on the roster last year as a redshirt guy. He's from Georgia, 6'2", 205 pounds, 205 pounds, class of 2023, maybe before I saw that in my notes. I'm reading through things too fast. Had a decent senior year in Georgia, was listed as a 3-star prospect. And frankly, one of those guys that you're happy to see stick through the change of coaches. He chose Houston as a Big 12 school, but his other offers were kind of in the Tulane, Samford, Mercer range. Tulane offers probably why he ended up staying, actually, now that I'm putting things together. But he's a private school kid, a smart kid. And I think that he's had a good enough spring that you'll probably see Caleb McMichael get some reps with the second. If I were guessing, man, if I were a betting man, I'd imagine he gets reps with the second team because he's currently the third team quarterback and the first team quarterback can't go. So we could also look a little bit at him, right? Last year, we heard a lot about Lucas Coley and Donovan Smith fighting out for the starting spot, at least from Dana Holgerson, only to find out that when it's time to put a second team quarterback in, ULA was the one they put in. This kind of keeps us from having that same kind of moment next fall, if we're being completely honest, right? So we'll see what Caleb McMichael can do. I got to be honest, there's a lot less on him out there, having not played a college football game yet. And frankly, the fellowship Christian school, private school world in Georgia film is a little bit, I don't want to say wonky. It's not like it's poorly done. It's just the talent level you're looking across. You don't know what you're looking at necessarily. So we'll see. We'll see what the competition looks like when it brings out of him. I will say I feel fairly confident that the receiver and running back spots, he's going to have a lot of talent around him. So we'll make that something to keep an eye on. Now, does we get his fair share of reps? Does Lucas Coley get his fair share of reps? Again, I like the kid. I don't know what his progress has been this spring necessarily, but Indy Widgeway, he's from California. He stuck around through the coaching change. His folks, I believe, went to Houston. So, does he get on the field at all? What does he look like with that second team group? I'm excited to see what Zeon Chris does. I'm interested to see what the second team does. And I'm really, really, really looking forward to what this offense looks like with some ball control, some muscle. The offensive line is going to be a big part of that. Obviously, the running backs are going to be a big part of that. But I think the mentality of this offense is shifting. And I think we're going to see a chunk of that on Saturday. Now, if you think I'm wrong, if you think I'm missing something, if you think you've got other ideas of what to be looking for, tell me in the comments down below. Locked On Cougs is a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team, our Houston Cougars, each and every day, sometimes twice a day like today. Go Cougs.